I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. My name is Dave Up the Grove. I have the honor of representing you on the King County Council. And in that role on the County Council, I'm responsible for voting on the policy frameworks and the budget for the King County Sheriff's Office. King County provides police service in areas where there's not a city, like White Center, and it also contracts with some local cities to provide police service. And locally here, the city of SeaTac and the city of Burien contract with the Sheriff's Office. Other local cities have their own independent police forces under the direction of their local city councils. Recent events in Ferguson, Missouri have spawned a national conversation about race, justice, and law enforcement. And at kitchen tables and water coolers all over the country, people are debating the events that unfolded and discussing how those issues impact their own lives. For many, this is not a new discussion. People of color face obstacles and barriers in their daily lives. Here in the Pacific Northwest, racism might not be as overt as the Deep South, but it is just as real. Sometimes subtle, sometimes even unintentional. We see institutional racism in our education system, in corporate America, and even our political institutions. Just look at the three elected officials up here. We're all three middle-aged white guys. No offense. And it would be naive to think that law enforcement institutions are immune to these struggles. Well, equal treatment under the law and equal access to justice is the shared vision of everyone on this stage. We also all recognize that we have more work to do to make that vision a reality, and that's why we're here tonight. Specifically, I'm hosting this event tonight for three reasons. Number one is your newly elected King County Council member. I want to listen and hear from you and get your feedback, suggestions, and ideas on these issues. Second, I want to help facilitate direct access to your county prosecutor and your county sheriff, two of the hardest working public servants I know, so you can hear from them, get your questions answered, and share your thoughts with them directly. And finally, I want to elevate the voices of our community so that a diverse group of local leaders can help better shape this important discussion. I recognize that we need to do more than just talk. My hope is that a public discussion of these issues can help build support for smart actions on the King County Council. That's why today at the County Council, I introduced legislation to begin the process of equipping King County Sheriff's deputies with body cameras and to develop appropriate privacy policies for their use. It's also why I support funding and full implementation of the King County Office of Law Enforcement Oversight. We're in the process of hiring a new director, which gives us a new opportunity to make this civilian oversight office much more effective. I want to end by telling you the story about my very favorite cousin, my younger cousin, Ashley. Ashley graduated from the University of Washington with honors, a master's degree, and she received a prestigious scholarship to study in Africa. She speaks Swahili, she's traveled the world, and is one of the most compassionate, open-minded people I know. And she could have taken just about any high-paying defense job in Washington, D.C., but Ashley chose a different path. This past July, at the Criminal Justice Training Center in Burien, I had to actually hold back tears of pride as I watched the badge get pinned on Ashley's chest as a newly commissioned police officer. And she's about 3 months into her new job with a local police department. And Ashley, like most officers, chose this job because she believes in public service. And every day when Ashley goes to work, I worry about her. I know that I really don't understand the job she does or the stresses she faces. I couldn't do that job. But I do know this. I want her to be paid well. I want her to receive the best possible training. I want her to have the equipment she needs to be safe and keep our community safe. And I want her surrounded by colleagues who care about her and share her positive values. And I want her to come home safely. We value law enforcement. And having a candid discussion about race and justice doesn't lessen our commitment to public safety and those who provide it. And at the risk of embarrassing her, my favorite cousin Ashley is here tonight. If she would stand, and if you'll join me in recognizing her and others like her. I have the pleasure of introducing tonight's moderator, but before I do that, I want to recognize some of the elected officials and law enforcement leadership who are with us today, and this is in no order other than the order of the sheet in front of me. Des Moines Mayor Dave Kaplan is here. Where's Dave? Thank you, Dave. Kent City Council Member Brenda Fincher. Normandy Park Council Member Stacia Jenkins. SeaTac Councilmember Terry Anderson, SeaTac Councilmember Dave Bush, SeaTac Councilmember Catherine Campbell, SeaTac Councilmember Pam Fernald, SeaTac Mayor and State Representative Mia Gregerson, Representative Tina Orwall. Let's give them a round of applause. I appreciate the willingness of some of the local law enforcement leaders to join us tonight. We have the Chief of the SeaTac Police, Lisa Mulligan, the Burien Police Chief, Scott Kimmerer, Normandy Park Chief, Chris Gaddis, Des Moines Chief, George Delgado, and Kent Police Chief, Ken Thomas, are all with us this evening. Let's thank them for being here. Our moderator tonight is Enrique Serna. The son of Mexican immigrants, Enrique Serna was born and raised in the Yakima Valley. Enrique joined KCTS 9 in January 1995. He has anchored current affairs programs, moderated statewide political debates, produced and reported stories for national PBS programs, as well as local documentaries on social and juvenile justice, the environment, and Latinos in Washington state. Enrique has earned 5 Northwest Region Emmy Awards and numerous other honors. And in June 2013, he was inducted into the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences Northwest Chapter Silver Circle for his work as a television professional. Please join me in welcoming Enrique Serna.
Thank you, Councilman, and thank you all for being with us this evening. We really appreciate the turnout. Just some house rules as we get going tonight, and as I find all my papers here. We're going to have a little bit of a conversation up here to begin with, and then we do want to listen to you, and we will have some microphones out in the audience so that you'll have an opportunity to ask some questions, make some comments. I do ask that you do so with respect and civility, and I will enforce that along the way, so heads up on that. So thank you all for being here. I appreciate it very much. Well, let me introduce the folks that are with us this evening. To my left is King County Prosecutor Dan Satterberg. To his left is the King County Sheriff, John Urquhart. Also with us is Celisa Vusa. She is the White Center CDA Executive Director and a longtime White Center community advocate and resident. Also next to her is Jim Gradden, recently retired as SeaTac Chief of Police after a law enforcement career spanning 39 years, including 34 years with the King County Sheriff's Office. Also, Dr. Edward Donaldson III, he's an author, an entrepreneur, a thought coach, and a multimedia personality. He has a dynamic message of retirement. He currently serves Kingdom Family Worship Center in Kent. Thank you for being here. And also with us this evening is Jorge Baron. He's the Executive Director of the Northwest Immigrant Rights Project, and most recently he's served as a staff attorney in the project's domestic violence unit, providing immigration legal services to survivors of domestic violence, and I know he's a busy man on many other issues as well. So thank you all for being here. I'd like to start with the panel here, and let's have some comments on your views and concerns about crime and justice in South King County. Dan Satterberg, let's start with you.
It's okay if I stand up, because I can't see about half the people.
If you'd like.
I will be displacing you?
Go ahead. No,
okay,
no.
Thank you.
You can displace me.
Hi. It's good to be here, and it's good to see all of you here for this important beginning of a conversation. You know, this summer I was reading a book by Malcolm Gladwell, who's one of my favorite authors, just as the Ferguson blew up. And the book is called David and Goliath, How Underdogs, Misfits, and the Art of Battling Giants. He explained that when people in authority want the rest of us to behave, it matters first and foremost how they behave. This is called the principle of legitimacy. And legitimacy is based on 3 things. First, the people who are asked to obey authority have to feel like they have a voice, that if they speak up, they will be heard. Second, that the law has to be predictable. There has to be reasonable expectations that the rules tomorrow are going to be roughly the same as the rules today. And third, the authority has to be fair. It can't treat one group differently from another. I thought about the principle of the legitimacy of authority as we watched what happened in Ferguson, and I also thought about David and Goliath, how an underdog can all of a sudden be powerful. As we watched these police officers who looked like they had power because they had military weapons and they were standing on top of their armored transports with rifles trained on the citizens. They looked like they were powerful, but all of a sudden the power shifted. And they looked like they were the underdogs, and that the people, if they could stand together, that they could have power. And pretty soon they had the media on their side, and they had the White House on their side. They had much of America on their side, and they had become the ones who were powerful. But it wasn't just the police who were under scrutiny. I think the court system has taken a fair bit of criticism for how it operated in Ferguson as well. When we found out that fines and fees that the courts levied on the people of Ferguson was the second largest revenue source for the city, that the city really relied on punishing its citizens in order to keep their city coffers afloat. And that made us all stand back and think about, could Ferguson happen here, and are we subject to those criticisms as well? And I want to be able to talk about some of those things a little bit later, but I think that this is a great start. We want to hear you, because the legitimacy of our authority depends on us listening to your voice and making sure that when we stand up and represent you, when we represent the people of the state of Washington in court, or when the officers of law stand up and effect an arrest under the rule of law, we have to have authority, and our authority comes from you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Dan Satterberg. Sheriff John Urquhart.
Thank you, Enrique, and thank you all for coming. This is a great turnout. I go to community meetings on a fairly regular basis, really all year long. This is the best turnout I've seen. So thank you for coming. Councilmember up the Grove, thanks for setting all this up. This is a great idea. I go to these community meetings and I hear people, politicians most often, they talk and they talk and they talk, and I'm not going to do that. You don't want to hear a speech from me. You want to ask questions. At least that's my interpretation. So I'm going to sit down and I'll be here as long as it takes to answer any question that you have. So I can hear from you and you can hear from us if you want to. I think that's probably the easiest and the best way to do that. So I welcome your questions. I'll just say one thing in closing. I have to wonder, in Ferguson, Missouri, did they ever have a community meeting like this? I doubt it. I doubt it. And you have to wonder, would the events in Ferguson have happened if the police department there had listened to the community? I don't think that so, and I don't think it would have been as bad if they did. So, thank you.
Very much, Sheriff. Thank you. Sealy.
Hi, you guys, everybody can hear me, right?
The microphones, you don't need to move them. They pick up
okay.
really well.
Okay.
Yes.
So my name is Sealy Savusa. I know many of you in the audience from a lot of my work in organizing around education. And when Councilmember Dave asked me to do this, the first thing that came to my head was, well, I'm not law enforcement. We actually talked about it. And, but why I came and agreed was because I wanted to make sure that we had community voice as part of this conversation. When I saw the flyer, can Ferguson happen here? My first reaction was, it is happening here. And it's happening here in many ways. And, but I also say that, we need to figure out how we can get this right. And we know the stories, we know the realities, we see the local stories that have just as much as an impact of what's happening nationally. And so I don't want to take it away. I don't want to take away what we need, the work that needs to happen here. And I know we have allies in the room and people that we could trust and really hopefully build relationships with, so that communities can seriously access and develop relationships with key folks who are protecting and patrolling and out there on the streets. How do we do this in a way that maintains humanity in the communities that we live, and that really helps to elevate the voices of young people to talk about the struggles in a real way and not in a way that further blames community. And so I'm very hopeful and very glad that I was invited to be part of this panel, and I hope that, I know that we can move things collectively. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jim Grattan.
Well, good evening. I have a couple of reference points that kind of form my thoughts for the evening. One, I come from a law enforcement family. I watched my dad as a law enforcement officer, and I thought a very good one, from 1950 to 1970. I came into the business in about 1973, and I saw a striking change. I saw, for the better, in law enforcement. What I do absolutely believe in the bottom of my heart, though, is that we have lots of room for improvement. We need to keep those gains. We need to keep moving that professionalism up the continuum. The other is, as a community resident here, I was born and raised over in Burien. I've watched our community grow and flourish and become something that I could never have imagined as a child. I went to Kennedy High School, a very white high school, and I came here both as a police officer and then ultimately as the chief, and I find myself dealing with a Somali business community. I was never trained to do that. How am I to deal with a Somali business community? How do I deal with a Sikh cab driver that's killed in his cab during a robbery? How do you deal with those communities when there's language barriers, there are cultural, ethnic barriers? One of our officers ended up in an officer-involved shooting the night before Ramadan was to begin in a mosque in the city of SeaTac. How do you deal with that? If you don't have something going for you, if you don't have some element in your back pocket to help you deal with that, you are going to misstep. It's not a matter of if. You are going to misstep. So forums like this, discussions like this, can only make our profession better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Johnson.
Let me enter the stream from a greater vista of a religious kind of and spiritual vista and viewpoint. First, let me say that I understand that our officers are facing situations and circumstances that are beyond our wildest imagination on a daily basis, and we appreciate so much what those that are commissioned to protect and serve are doing for our community. With that said, structured racism has nothing to do with intentionality. And just because the intent is not there does not mean that the racism isn't present. Hatred often begins in a situation which there's contact without fellowship, contact that is devoid of any of the primary overtures of warmth, fellow feeling, and genuineness. So stereotypes and false images of people of color, and particularly African Americans, have led to the demonization of our people that make relations with those commissioned to protect and serve problematic. The community feels terrorized, and the myth of respectability has been debunked by continual hostile encounters with those commissioned to serve the community. That stereotyping is happening on both ends, vis-a-vis caricaturization of police officers and stereotyping of African American citizens. And whenever you have that kind of mutual stereotyping happening, there's always going to be a dissonance and difficulty in that relationship. What forums like this have got to do, and what has to continue to happen as we move forward, is to debunk those stereotypes and those myths on both ends. So I'm excited about the opportunity to have a conversation from both perspectives that will dismantle those misunderstandings between various communities.
Jorge Barone.
Good evening. And I first just wanted to start again by, as many people have, commending all of you for being here. I think that as I look around this room, I feel optimism because I see people who want to engage in a conversation, who want to come together and discuss and talk to each other as people about these important issues. So I really thank you as being part of this community for being here and taking your time to think seriously about these issues. Just as a way of background, I want to explain my role. I work for an organization that provides immigration legal assistance for low-income people. It actually works statewide, but we have an office here in King County, and we serve a lot of clients from King County, and particularly from the South King County area. And I think one of the experiences that we've seen is this incredible distrust that has been generated over time between immigrant communities and local law enforcement, and it has been the result of our very broken immigration system and the fact that, unfortunately, some of the federal policies have used local law enforcement as a way to channel people into deportation hearings. And so what that causes is people seeing local law enforcement as an extension of immigration enforcement, and that has caused some real damage in the trust of communities, the communities that I work with, of coming forward. And this is across a number of immigrant communities, from people who've been here as refugees for a number of years to also more recent arrivals. That's the bad news of what's happened over time. The good news that I have to report is that we have taken some steps, and we here in King County have adopted policies that are helping in this area. The King County Council last year adopted an ordinance that is restricting the situations in which local law enforcement can hold people in the jail and transfer them to Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And actually, there was an amendment that is really going to restrict the number of people who can be held. And I think that's already helping to improve, although it's going to take some time to repair some of the damage that have been done. So there are some great policies. The Sheriff's Office for a long time has had a good policy of not asking about immigration status, and that is very important. And I think particularly my message is for those of you that are in local law enforcement, so important for you to have those kind of proactive policies. Don't just assume that people are going to think that you're not going to report them to immigration. Tell them, because many of the people that I work with don't see distinctions between the federal government and local law enforcement, and they're going to be afraid of coming to you and reporting what's happening in their communities. And I say, a lot of people look at it and say, well, this is an issue only then for immigrant communities. And I say, no. Think about what's happening if somebody right now is burglarizing your home, and there's an undocumented person walking down the street and they see that. But then they're afraid of picking up the phone and calling 911. Now, nothing bad is going to happen to the undocumented person. They're just going to go along on their way. But your house is going to be burglarized, and the next person's house, because that person wasn't held accountable. So it's an issue for all of us to make sure that everybody in our community feels safe and feels like they can have contact with law enforcement without repercussions happening to them in a negative way. Thank you. I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you. A couple of other people we want to recognize from the Superior Court. Judges Andrea Darvas and Sean O'Donnell are here. Can you please stand so we can no, there you go. Welcome. Good to have you here. I want to pick up on something that, pardon me?
Leroy McCullough is here.
Okay, thank you. Judge McCullough. I didn't get that one. Thank you. All right. And thank you very much for pointing that. I hope, I just got that, so, all right. Thank you for pointing that out. Let me come back to something that you said, Celie, in the whole issue about militarization of the police, and I believe you said that it was already here. Can you talk a bit about that more as far as what you see and the concern?
I mean, so I work with a lot of youth, and I work in the community, and those of you who know me know I also used to sit on the school board here, Highline School Board. Currently, I'm on the Board of Trustees at Highline Community College. And the issue of local law enforcement comes up a lot with young people. And what I'm hearing is for there not being a place for some of the conversations to happen, to take place, to address some of the tensions and some of the dynamics that happen when our young people are dealing with a situation with police. So the Ferguson situation, that's the response that I got from, my nephew, who is 16 years old. And I said, what do you think about Ferguson? He's like, well, what do you think about King County? And so, see, our kids understand some of these dynamics that are happening around racism and institutionalized racism and in the police force. We all collectively have a role to play in addressing how that's done. And this isn't rocket science. A lot of it is very basic. How do we develop the relationships that we need to have the conversation with each other? And not in a way that points the finger at folks, but how do we do this in a way that really maintains respect for the history that people have around the issue of law enforcement, the experiences that people bring to the table around their own experience with police, but also know that I say this, and we don't get opportunities like this, because when I talk about the issues with law enforcement, it's my law enforcement too. So we need to figure out how to get this right, because we do not want to continue to oppress kids, people of color. We want to figure out how do we put together a police force that really has a relationship with families and communities, and how do we build stronger neighborhoods as a result of our collective work together. So, for me, it has been my experience is to be able to create the space to have the hard conversation, and that no, it's not a personal attack on an individual, but it's systemic change that communities are asking for.
Well, let's take that one step further. Then where do we have that conversation? I mean, we have a conversation happening here tonight, obviously, and we're going to, the sheriff is here to listen, so is the prosecutor, but how do we take that elsewhere? How do we make that, build upon that?
I think that we have to reestablish connectivity between the cultural centers of various people groups and the police department. There was a time where the police department was involved in church activities and community center activities in ways that lessened the tension. I pastor a largely young adult congregation, and I know that every police stop is a heart-racing, heart-wrenching experience. The vice president of our board of directors for our church is a 35-year-old African-American male who's been stopped by the police 4 times on a Sunday morning on his way to the same church, unexplainably. And each time there's a heart-racing experience because it's a new officer you don't know. And the reality is, because of Ferguson and events like Ferguson that happen all across the country, the thought is this the day I'm going to be shot? And until we reestablish a connectivity between the police and the community in places like churches, community centers, high schools, etc., we're always going to have that tension that exists between the communities and the law enforcement, because the communities are not convinced that law enforcement is in place to protect and serve as it relates to people of color.
Sheriff? I don't disagree with you at all. That's where we need to be. The churches, the rec centers, the schools, where the police officers need to be. But it's bigger than just that. I always say that the biggest mistake, the biggest detriment to community policing, however you define that, was the invention of the patrol car. Because what my officers do now is they drive around in their air-conditioned offices on 4 wheels, and they've all got cell phones, so they don't even have to stop at the 7-Eleven or at the fire station to make a phone call. Now they have a computer at their fingertips. They have the internet right there, and they have air conditioning, like I said, and they pull over and they never get out. And there is no way to interact with the public, and I don't care what the race is, there's no way to interact with the public until you park that police car and you get out of your car and you walk around and you talk to people. That's how you have interaction, is by talking to people, by meeting people, letting people know that we're not the bad guy any more than you are the bad guy. If I had my druthers, I'd have nothing but beat cops walking the street like we used to have in this, because we can't afford it. That's why we don't have it. We can't afford it. Why we don't have beat cops. But a beat cop, a good beat cop, he knew everybody. He knew the bad guys, he knew the good guys, and he knew the difference between the bad guys and the good guys, and everybody knew him. But since we're not going to have beat cops come back, I beat repeatedly into the heads of my officers, park your damn car and get out and walk around. You can go to an apartment complex. I guarantee you, the second time you're there, you're going to be surrounded by kids. They're going to be hanging on your belt. They're going to want to talk on your radio, asking what kind of gun you have. I'm talking little kids. The big kids, probably not so much. But you can still interact with them, and they're not going to be afraid of you. You made a great point. That pit you get in the back in your stomach when you look in your mirror and there's a police car behind you. Whether they pull you over or not, it happens to me. and rue the first officer that tries to write me a ticket. But it happens to me too, and it happens to all of us. And I can't imagine, I have no frame of reference how an African American does feel when that happens, regardless if they're getting pulled over or not. It's a fact of life, and it's something that we, the white police force, has to deal with, and we don't do a very good job of it, and it's time to do a better job of it.
Let's talk, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Just to follow up to what Dr. Reverend was saying and what the sheriff was saying, I know that one of the struggles that I had as a law enforcement leader in the area was looking, to me it has to start before we just tell the officers to go out and get in the car. It's who we're hiring. It's how are we recruiting? How are we choosing our people? How are we testing? And I think and for no fault of anybody's, we have very, very good, passionate people doing this job, but it is a very white force. I remember when I started, how many, I think we had maybe 2 female officers in my entire precinct out here when I was just a little baby deputy. Fortunately, that has changed, but we need to keep making those strides. We need to have members of our Somali community want to become police officers. We need to have members of our Sikh community want to become police officers. I don't know how you entice that. I don't pretend to have the answers, but somewhere in that piece, in that recruitment, that testing process, that training process, we have to acknowledge that we're falling short right now in the process.
Sheriff, are you doing anything to reach out?
Let me give you just a little bit of history. Go back 27 years when I was signing on as a brand new officer, not as young as most of them, but still brand new. And I took the civil service test, which is what we have to do. I did very well on the test. I had a college degree. I was 6 or 7 with the King County test. But back then, 27 years ago, we had affirmative action in the government. So as well as I didn't get hired because people that had a worse score on the test that were African American or persons of color, another minority, or were a woman, they got hired before I did. Took me, I should have been hired the first month. Took me 7, 8, 9 months to get hired. Well, boo-hoo for me, because eventually I did get hired. And you know, I've had a fairly successful career as a police officer. That's because of affirmative action. We had a much more diverse, for a while there, a much more diverse police department because we could hire. We knew we had to hire more women. We knew we had to hire more minorities. And then I-200 reared its ugly head, thank you, John Carlson, across the state, and they did away with affirmative action. Now all we have is that civil service test, because in the government you have to pass a civil service test. So I go down once a month and I swear in new officers at the police academy. Since I've been in office 18 months, I've gone every single month. And I go down there and I look. And every month I'm swearing in 4, 5, 6, or 7 officers, and guess what? Every single one of them is white. Every single one of them is male, with 1 or 2 exceptions where we are female, all the time. So I go back to my HR people, I say, what's going on here? How come we don't have any minorities or any women that are scoring high enough on the test to get hired? They said the primary reason is that if you are a veteran of a war zone, used to be Vietnam, now it's Iraq and Afghanistan, you get an extra 10% on that civil service test. Well, if you scored 90, now you got 99. That puts you up at the top of the test. By law, I have to go in order. So that's all I'm getting is people that have been in the military. Now, not as much as it used to be. Not as much as it used to be, or they're not applying. So I'm looking at, let me finish up now. So I'm looking at what I can do.
Hold on. Let him respond.
I'm looking at what I can do to change that. I can't do it based on race. But what I can do, and what we have done, is we've changed the civil service rules. We got the county to change the civil service rules. Now if you speak another language, a second language besides English, you get that same 10%. If you've served 2 years in the Peace Corps, if you served...
All right. Thank you very much. Let's move on. Come on.
If you've served 2 years in the Peace Corps, you get an extra 10%. I have to work within the confines of the law. I can't change the law. But I can't have a successful police department unless we mirror the community. That's the only way we can be successful, and we're doing everything we can, recruiting, hiring, everything we can do under the law to make that happen.
Yeah, Reverend, go ahead. The Reverend.
But you have a group of African Americans out here, you're not giving them the advantage, you're not giving them any extra points or anything. So you're downgrading us, and we can't even get the jobs.
As Sheriff, I can't do that. I can't give you an extra 10 points.
Let me ask this question.
Okay,
Let me
Over here.
ask this question,
Here we
Sheriff.
go.
Then is there any community development programs where you are going into the African American community and partnering with our young adults, our college-age young adults, preparing them for this civil service test, preparing them for careers in the military? Are you partnering with the community in any way to funnel people from the African American community into the police force purposefully and intentionally, besides giving benefits to other communities? How are you partnering with the African American community to get a pipeline from the community into the police force that is equivalent to the pipeline from the schools to the prison?
We put our recruiters into the communities. We help them. We help anybody that wants to take the test be successful on that test. So yes, we are.
What's the name of that specific program, and where are those recruiters?
I don't know the name of the specific program, but we are putting our recruiters into every community of color that we possibly can that will have us so that we can do that.
So the African American community needs to see that. We need that information, because I don't see you getting out here in the community to address those issues with community organization, grassroots organization. I don't see that happening. So you need to share that information to us, provide that to us, so we can understand what you're doing, and maybe we can assist you in the process. But as of right now, it seems like you are just deleting, not caring about the African American community.
Okay. Let's move on here. Just a second before everybody starts moving on with the questions, because we're going to give you that opportunity. And like I said, some house rules here. I want to ask, the councilman mentioned that he was going to introduce legislation, or actually did, on to begin a process of equipping King County Sheriff deputies with body cameras. So your response to that, what do you think of this?
That's great. My congratulations. Council member Up the Grove and I have talked about this at length. You have my full support. I think it's a fantastic idea.
Let me move over to another issue, and that is the civilian head of the sheriff oversight. He quit recently, pointing out neck restraints as a last straw. What is happening there? That's second response.
I think there's been significant.
Just a second. Come on. Here we go.
I think there's been significant community interest in LVNR.
What does that mean?
lateral vascular neck restraint.
Okay, folks.
Okay, let me rephrase that.
Come on. Let's have the conversation. Come on. Here we go.
The sheriff's office is no longer going to train on chokeholds. Is that clear enough? It's called neck restraints, it's called LVNR, and you like to call it chokeholds. The sheriff's office is no longer going to train on neck restraints, LVNR, or chokeholds. I can't be any clearer than that.
All right. Okay. We're going to have a chance for people to have an opportunity to wait. Where are my microphone guys? I'm going to have one over here, one over here. So if you'd like to ask a question, raise your hand. I'll be kind of motioning for those folks. One of you get on this side, the other one get on that side. So here we go. Where's my other person here? Right there? Do we have a question? Here we go. Over here. Over here. Take it right there. Oh, you got somebody there? I'm sorry, I can't see you very well. Okay. Go ahead. Don't give up the mic, please. Hold on to the mic. Hold on. Hold on. He'll handle the mic for you, okay? Thank you. Just speak loudly. Okay, I can tell that.
Okay, well, I'll throw this pitch out. Now, the officers that are in the surrounding counties, King County, Ferguson County, any county, are they wearing monitors as far as the visual iPods, any kind of characteristics before they could be seen as far as processing the victim or any kind of circumstances that may be at large? Because that's the first thing I'm looking at. Because I'm doing a communications check around the dash. So, where are the monitors?
Okay,
Going
can you?
nationwide. I'm originally from Louisville, Kentucky, so from the Commonwealth. So I'm just trying to represent and see where all the cops are nationwide with this program.
I don't
Sheriff.
believe there's any police agencies in the state of Washington that have body cams. And there's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, the ACLU right now is against them. They've asked for a opinion from the Attorney General's office about it, because there are several issues with them. The Attorney General's office has had this for many, many, many months, has not issued an opinion yet. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not going to wait around. As soon as the county council funds them, my officers will wear them. It's as simple as that.
Am I right? I only have one microphone out there working. So how about that? The one person with the microphone, move over here in the middle, so that way we can make sure that it's not working either. Okay. All right. Just speak loudly at this point. Who's over here next? With a question? Who's got a question over here? Go ahead.
Hello?
Just speak loudly. Is it
James
working?
Bible, president, I'm sorry, no longer president of the NAACP, but legal redress of the NAACP for the states of Alaska, Oregon, and Washington. We definitely play a role in evaluating police systems, policies, and misconduct, and also positive actions of law enforcement all over the 3 states. We've been focused principally on the Seattle Police Department for the past 4 to 5 years, which ultimately led to a Department of Justice intervention. We gave King County some time to clean up their mess. We gave them some time to clean up their mess because they indicated that they would actually be putting forth ordinances and rules and systems in place that would actually create accountability and something more than the illusion of fairness. At this stage, I am disappointed that we waited so long, because I'm certain at this stage that there is nothing more than the illusion of fairness in the King County Sheriff's Office. I am positive that there is nothing more than the illusion of fairness that's created by the ordinances that put in place what was supposed to be accountability in King County. I am tired of asking the question about distant places when individuals are getting paralyzed by King County sheriffs in the city of Seattle. I am tired of representing individuals who are beaten repeatedly by officers, actually, I'm sorry, not officers, King County sheriff deputies, and then charged with crimes, later exonerated, and then we have to go to litigation. I say exonerated because the person that was beaten ended up charged by the prosecutor's office in King County for raising the idea that this officer actually did something to them when they beat them with their shoulders, their arms, their knees, and then tasered them while they were handcuffed on video. We're tired. We're absolutely tired. So at this stage, there is no place for any sort of passivity. You had that opportunity. We had somebody here in King County that perhaps had the most meaningful conversation about police misconduct in the sheriff's office in his position last week, and he's no longer here today. That's Charles Gaither. He brought us all together. He gave us conversations, and he gave you time. But your time is out, and we're tired, and it's not only institutional, it's individual. And you're allowing a smokescreen, and frankly, though some may not say it, we'll say it here. The comments of the sheriff here today clearly outline the distances in our racial understanding. They clearly outline how racist somebody can be, perhaps even when they think they're not.
Okay.
Ferguson is absolutely here. Let's not pretend it isn't.
Sheriff, want to respond? Go ahead, Chief.
I welcome the scrutiny of the NAACP any day.
Is it working? Okay, go ahead. Hold the mic. Please hold on to the mic.
Yes.
There we go.
Yes, I was trying to get an understanding from the sheriff as to the programming that they have that allows the sheriff's department to partner with the minority community for getting officers on the sheriff's force. I do not understand, or I did not understand what the program was, where it is, what it consists of, or any of that at this point.
It's a policy of working with anybody that wants to become a sheriff's deputy to help them do better on the civil service exam, whether it's the physical ability test or whether it's the written or the video test. And we do that in.
Where is that being held at?
We do that. We reach out to the communities. We don't have them come to us. We go out into the community to do that.
Who's the contact person? How do you contact this department?
Well, we've got a recruiting page. You can talk to our recruiter, and he will set it up with you. Anything they want.
Will you develop a program that will have a place where we can go and contact someone for this development program?
Yes.
When?
We already have, we set up fairs, job fairs, where people can come to us in addition to us going to them, and we will talk about what they need to do. We will help them do that. We will set them up with a mentor within the sheriff's office to help them pass that test and score higher on the test so I could legally hire them.
You don't see how unreasonable that is, what you just said, do you?
No.
I've only got one microphone that seems to be working well. I'm going to ask the one microphone guy over here, fellow, to move into the middle so that way we can see you and also the people can come to you in the middle. Hello. Can you come, the guy in the red tie, come over to the middle aisle here and everybody come there so that we
I can't leave without the microphone. He's holding the microphone.
Okay, go ahead now. And then
all right, I don't need video. I can just use audio. My name is Gerald Hankerson. I'm the president of the NAACP Seattle King County, as well as the president of the states of Alaska, Oregon, and Washington. And this is really, for me, is really like a dog and pony show. If you really want to talk about what's going on about Ferguson, you need to get up out of here and go out into the community where it's being impacted by some of the decisions that's being made. Everybody in the community understands that the sheriff department have a grave opportunity to make a difference here, but on the heels of what happened to Brother Gardner in New York, you decided to announce to come back this neck restraint, which we call the chokehold. Call it what it is. And then a week later, you decided to hire someone as your second in command who the Seattle Police Department eliminated on a pugil behind some same issues. And then thirdly, you wouldn't even address the actual email came out from your captain that's ordering, quote unquote, your deputies, paying them overtime, going out into the neighborhood and quote unquote, kick ass and take names. And anytime you come in contact with anybody, arrest them, quote, period. That doesn't seem like someone's trying to work with our neighborhood. That doesn't seem like someone's trying to come out and negotiate and talk to our kids. And then at the same time, while you're protecting the big banks by enforcing foreclosures on people in these communities, this is what you're about. You're there to protect the rich. You're there to protect your constituency and people that voted for you for, and I personally believe, as president, and yeah, I will say this, that I don't believe you give a damn about the communities of color because your actions have shown otherwise. You don't feel like you have no accountability because you're an elected official, and the only person that was in a place to hold you accountable, last week you eliminated him from that office on Charles Gaitner. So the question for me and the NAACP and my community is saying, what are your plans about making sure that you guys have been held accountable for the egregious actions that you've been doing because it's your office has been killing brothers on the Metro Transit behind not paying their fare. It was your office that's pushing people down and paralyzing them because of some unfolk. So what accountability are we going to be able to hold the sheriff accountable for doing exactly what those officers is doing in Ferguson?
Sure.
Sheriff's office has never shot anybody for not paying their fare on Sound Transit. We shot that gentleman because he pulled a gun on our officer. It's on tape, it's on video. It shouldn't even be an issue. As far as evictions, I'm going to obey court orders that order me to evict people from houses. As far as the incident up in Skyway, that was a reaction to the desires of the community. There was a tremendous amount of gang activity up there. There were shootings, there was drive-by shootings, there was homicides. They wanted an emphasis up there, and we provided that emphasis, and we took people to jail. Of the people we contacted, 24% were armed, 66% were gang members. I make no apologies for the emphasis up in Skyway.
We have a question over there. Go ahead, sir. Okay, you have the microphone. Go ahead. Or whoever he's got. They're next.
We'll get to you, Jeremy.
Sheriff, in lieu of what has happened in Ferguson, what conversations or initiatives are you taking with the public that's on record right now to make a change, make a difference, to make sure that Emerald City is a shining example of wanting to do this in a more progressive, positive way to put the community and law enforcement working together? What are you doing now?
Well, first of all, I'm here tonight. Second of all, I am not going to let my police department become militarized like what happened in Ferguson. Simple as that.
We have a question in the middle here. Go ahead.
My name is Abdurrahman Hashi. I'm a Somali American. I truly respect the Dave council member who organized this event. It's conversation within the community. And we have to have monthly basis to really have real conversation. I very concerned about any single law enforcement who are not within our community. I respect the law enforcement. It's our part of community, but if the Ferguson issue is here now, we don't have to think outside the, it's here now. And as a community member, I've seen a lot of concern from Somali American, especially male under so-called tourism, so-called whatever you name it called. I respect the officers. I respect the law enforcement. We need justice and we need representation within the system. We are not outsiders. We are concerned citizens. We need a voice. And collectively, I see the room. I appreciate all of you, especially those who believe that they want to have conversation. It's a time to recruit and hire diversity law enforcement officers, whether they came from Asian American, African American, Pacific, all you name it. We need real representation. We need elected representative within the community. We all of us, we have to vote. We have to be part of the system. Please, make a change, and anyone who is not listening to you, take it off.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm Don Carmignani, a 40-year resident of this of the SeaTac area, and a retired school teacher. So of course, education comes to my mind, and I think there's need for education on both sides, like what to do when you are arrested or pulled over. The normal human response, untrained response, is to either fight or fly. So sometimes, you know, they get to be belligerent when they are arrested, and sometimes they drive off dragging the officer behind them. But I think it would help if we all learned what to do if we are arrested. And I thoroughly sympathize. I'm sure I don't understand, but I certainly sympathize with the black community. They definitely are being discriminated against, and action needs to be taken. In the case of the Missouri thing, when Brown was arrested, the police covered up with by claiming that he had been belligerent in stealing cigars, when actually the video showed that that was not involved at all. And the autopsy of him after he was shot was that he was shot in the back, and perhaps he was fleeing, but one witness said that he raised his hand after the officer said, "Stop, stop, or I'll shoot." He raised his hand, stopped, and he was shot anyway, twice in the head and 4 other times in the body. So we must be very, very careful about enforcing fairly when a policeman commits a crime, a murder especially.
Thank you. Over here. Go ahead. You got it. There's someone right here.
Good evening. My name is Gwen Allen Karsten. I am the Executive Director for Kent Black Action Commission. And I'm here to just ask a few questions. I'm here to make a couple of statements. My first question is to Sheriff. Do you have any oversight?
Yes.
Who is the oversight?
We have basically two independent oversight. First is the Ombudsman's Office out of King County. The second is the Office of Law Enforcement Oversight. It's established by the King County Council, and they basically run it. Civilian oversight in both cases.
And in the case of you training your 28 selective sheriffs or police force, you've trained those 28 with this so-called, whatever you're calling it, but I call it chokehold. You've trained them already.
16 of them.
How are you going to untrain them from using that chokehold?
We'll make it against policy to use it.
And if they use the chokehold,
if they use the chokehold, they will be disciplined.
They will be disciplined.
Yes.
Okay, and disciplined by you or by who?
By me.
By you. And so if you're going to be doing that, just like you're making it clear that you've changed the name of this chokehold, you need to make clear how you're going to discipline that person or persons when this happens. Because I truly believe that if one person has been trained to do something, their instinct or their intellect or lack thereof will cause them to use what they've been trained in. The next thing I'd like to say, and I'd like to make this a point to everyone in this room, we're sitting here talking about how people are coming to the state of Washington. Yes, we have been mandated in some areas to receive those people, but we've also are now witnessing, because of gentrification in Seattle and other places, that in the South King County region, we do have black folks coming to the South King County region. And with respect to that, we do have an expectation that we're going to be treated as fairly as anyone who might be living out in this South King County region. So what I'm trying to say is that because we come from places like Florida, which I come from, I've been here 42 years, but I remember what it felt like when I couldn't walk the streets. I had to walk on the other side of the street when a white person was coming. I remember what it felt like drinking out of the colored water fountains and sitting up in the balcony where I wasn't allowed to come and watch the theater. I had to be up in the balcony. I remember those things which were detrimental to my family and other people, and a lot of those things came at the hands of corrupt police officers. So we do not want to go back to those times. We want to move forward. We want to move forward knowing that we have a full and complete sensitive police enforcement. We want to make sure that there's nothing in my mind when I'm riding down the street and I feel threatened by the cop when he turns his lights on. I want to know when I say, officer, is there a problem? And I don't expect that officer to drag me out of my car or even pull me into the window of his car to make me know what he's there for. I want to make sure that my children, my grandsons, can walk the streets and not be accosted because they look like some black person that you're looking for. I want to make sure that my great-grandchildren are able to have the peace and comfort that you and a lot of your friends might enjoy that I might not be able to have. So all I'm asking is that if you're doing these things in the guise of trainings and making sure that you are policing, make sure that you continue to think of us as humans and not as animals, that you can do anything you want to. We want to be safe. We pay your salary. Every time I pay a tax, I'm paying a part of your salary. And I want you to protect and serve me to equate to that I'm paying you for.
We want exactly let me just finish up here.
Yeah.
Ma'am, we want exactly the same thing. The difference is I can make that happen. And I can make that happen, and I intend to do everything in my power as sheriff to make that happen.
And one more thing, if I can. I was at a meeting with you in Seattle, and you made clear, I asked you a question. I asked you what you were doing to train your officers to shoot to disable as opposed to shoot to kill
We don't train that way. We don't train that way.
You don't train to shoot first and ask questions later?
That's not the question you asked.
Evident in anything that's come up in any police report?
Your question was, do we train to disable?
Do you?
No.
You don't train to shoot somebody and just keep them from doing something. You'd rather kill somebody?
No.
Hello? I'm asking.
And I answered no. I would not rather kill somebody. What I'm saying is, to answer your question, is not only the State Police Academy, there is no police department in the country that trains their officers to shoot to disable, because it doesn't work.
And when that happens, what is your recourse?
I'm sorry?
When and if that happens, what is your recourse?
When what happens?
If somebody's shot to kill when they could have shot to disable?
It doesn't happen. We don't train our officers to shoot to disable.
What is your recourse when this does happen?
If we actually do shoot somebody and they're disabled?
If you shoot to kill,
Yes,
as opposed to shooting to disable,
that's right.
your training should include sensitivity enough that a police officer should know whether or not they're going to be accosted and struck or whatever. But if they shoot to kill and not disable, that tells me if I do something wrong, that person may just shoot to kill. Right. So what are you going to do? That is a real probability. And just like you changed that name of the chokehold, you need to do something to change that mentality. And it needs to happen along with everything else.
Question over here. Go ahead. That's good.
Right here, look at this. This says police use taser, gunfire, they disabled the person, and rubber bullets. This was 6 days ago. Yes, it's Seattle Police. I didn't know you used rubber bullets at all. They never used a rubber bullet on a black person. So how come you are not using, this was just 6 days ago. They tasered him, he cut the wire, they shot the disabled, and then they used rubber bullets.
But that was
And
the
it
Seattle
worked.
police.
He's handcuffed, he's white, getting in the car, he's still alive.
Let's go over here. Question. Over here. Jeff.
So I can speak to that to some degree. The police are trained to keep themselves safe first, and then the public safe second. They are this is how they are trained. I'm not debating it. I'm totally against this policy, but this is their policy. By keeping themselves safe, they believe that they are better able to keep the public safe. They have the legal authority to use lethal force not under a legitimate threat, merely the perception of a threat. Now, this goes to police accountability. We recently had the head of the shooting range for the King County Sheriff's Office, or the head shooting instructor there, and SWAT team member, was pleaded guilty for pimping his wife, selling steroids, selling ecstasy, stealing rounds from the gun range, stealing brass casings from the gun range. When this happened, he also took those casings, bought weapons with them, and resold them. Now, he was tipped off by the sheriff's department that this raid was coming. So when his house was raided, they found no weapons. None of the 39 handguns registered to him have been found at this date. His partner was put on paid administrative leave and just recently announced that no charges would be brought against him. It is ridiculous and insulting to us to think that there is so little oversight within the sheriff's department that this wouldn't have come to light because of your oversight. This is a 20-year-plus co-worker of yours. And the only reason it came to light, not because of the sheriff's department, not because of internal affairs, was because of the divorce proceeding this man was involved in. And now the sheriff's office and the prosecutor's office is acting like no one else could have possibly been involved in this. There's no other discipline going on. This is a 20-year-plus veteran. Where's the accountability? Where's the actual integrity within the department? I mean, that's inexcusable.
Jeremy, your facts are wrong.
Please educate me to which of those facts are wrong, because I read those off the newspaper's clippings today.
The facts...
So, I mean, what gets reported in the newspaper is often wrong, but I can only go on what information has been given out.
There are 2 people so far that have been fired out of this. There will be additional people that will be fired that will lose their job out of this. There will be other discipline that comes out of this. So for you to say that is just...
I'm only going off the newspaper
Jeremy, let me
reports.
finish. For you to say that there's just one person that's had any consequences is just plain not true.
I'm so glad to hear
Okay.
that, because I can only go off the newspaper reports and what
Well,
the
this is an ongoing case. It's not over yet. We're still doing investigation. And then when it's over, you'll have all of that.
And this situation also had the King County Prosecutor's Office saying that, you know, this guy's only getting 20 months because he's a cop. If he was anybody else, he wouldn't have gotten this time. That's the quote in the newspaper. Where is the accountability?
I don't think that's the quote in the newspaper. He is going to prison. He's going to prison. He pled guilty as charged. We charged him with everything we could charge him with. So, I mean, that's...
Question right here. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you for taking the time to listen to me, for one. And thank you for all the officers in this room who are working very hard to protect the community and to serve the community. I would just like to say thank you. Along with that, nobody's talked about the mental health issues that go along with the criminal justice system. The criminal justice system is full of mental health patients, mental health issues. And until we can grab and get a hold of the mentally disabled people who are addicts, who are domestic disturbance abusers, who are alcoholics, until we can get a hold of that at the early years, during the early years, then we are going to have a continuing problem of criminal behavior. My brother overdosed. He's gone. My other brother is spending his life in prison for murder. So I totally get the whole criminal justice system. I don't think there is a Christmas or a Thanksgiving in my house the cops did not show up and arrest either one of my brothers, okay? My mom was a school teacher. My dad was strict. My papa was a police officer. My uncle was a police officer. I get both criminals and police officer work. I have been involved with the community, and until we get a hold of what drugs do and what alcohol does to a person's brain when they're in junior high and high school, and until we get a hold of that and lead them in a different direction, we're losing our youth, regardless if they're white, regardless if they're Asian, regardless if they're African American. And we really have to work together as a community to be involved as parents, to get involved with your kids' education, to be there for them when they get home from school, for when they leave. And I know it's hard because I'm a single mom. I get it. But we need to work. Come on, guys, get involved with the schools. Grab these kids, parent other kids. You know, if you see somebody who's getting into trouble and you don't feel like calling 911 because you're scared, you gotta be more brave than that. You gotta say, you know what, I care about this family. I care about these kiddos. I'm gonna call 911 and I'm gonna do something about it.
Is the mic not working over there? Or Dave, go ahead. Go ahead, right here.
I wanted to say first thank you to the board, the esteemed members of the board, and also to our council person, Dave Updegrove, for providing this forum. I would like to offer first an opinion and then also a commentary. I think it's important that we do talk about Ferguson, and unfortunately, I know that King County and the city of Seattle and Washington State, as with a lot of other states around the country, have a history of race relation issues, and they're not going to be solved here tonight, unfortunately. A bigger piece of this is that I too am if you look at my gray hair, I'm also someone who had very similar experiences growing up in the South, where separate bathrooms and riding in the back of the bus and having to cross the street when And part of that, again, is disenfranchised. When you have people who have been disenfranchised, that you have a feeling of being subverted. Your personal freedoms are not, you can't articulate or you can't discuss those things publicly, because then people of other colors will look at you and not really consider what you have to say matters. So that's part of my opinion. The discussion about demilitarizing police departments, I think that is the discussion even in today's headlines, the discussion from Congress about demilitarizing police departments. I understand fully, having served 20 years in the military and also in healthcare, that you don't bring a switchblade to a gunfight. I've also I can proudly say that I've been to the Citizen Police Academy and the Fire Department Academy here in this city to take my active part. So I understand that, I get that. And I think part of this discussion, which I'm hoping there will be future discussions, because this is, again, just kind of beginning to strike the match, because there is a lot of things that took place in Ferguson, which I don't think, again, having lived all over this country and all over the world, that in other places around the world, or at least you cannot say, or at least in Seattle, where you don't have people of color representing the community. Now, that being said, I think it's also important in the case of Ferguson to understand the demographics there. You had only 3 African-American police or people of color who were on their police force. The chief of police, the fire chief, the mayor, and all of the other members of their political corps were white. This is a middle-class city. The power of the lever rests with us. We are the ones that control the lever. If you want representation, you have to show up. My comments. First, I want to say to Sheriff Ungerod, I've listened to you for many years when you were a spokesperson for King County. I sympathize with your police department and the city of Seattle and a lot of other police departments around the country for some of the problems that you have to deal with. But as you pointed out, that one of the things that's failing the police departments is that you don't get out of your police cars and are part of the community. You have to be part of the community. We would all like to be, if I may offer this, we all would like our children to be like Russell Wilson, if I may use that analogy. He's very articulate, he's very well-spoken, he's very faith-filled young man. He handles himself well in public. However, we know that oftentimes those people that you may encounter are more like Marshawn Lynch. Even though he is also very articulate, very well-spoken. I don't care whether you agree or disagree with me. This is my time to speak. So you don't have to agree with me. But what I'm trying to say is that because of the media and because of this, again, this disenfranchisement and all of the other things that unfortunately cloud the perceptions of the police and mankind, for that the human race, that we do not filter out what's beyond that individual that you're looking at. You don't dig down and peel back the pieces of the onion. So, again, those are my comments. Police are not nation builders. military people are not nation builders. We have very specific roles. Your job, as with most of you sitting on this panel, are to serve the public. And we do appreciate that, but we also think that we could all do a lot better. Thank you.
Right here.
Good evening. My name is Shalise Seacrest. My question to you, it's not from my background as being the past president of the NAACP, although I am. It's not as my background of being a trial attorney that defended the so-called gang members that you wrongly identified as being a threat in our community, although it is. My question to you is coming from being a mother. I'm a mama of 2 black boys, age 18 and 21. My question comes down from how do we make certain that they are safe against the unlawful officers who are patrolling our streets that are supposed to be in our neighborhoods? How can we make certain that the moment they step out of line, the moment that they are acting outside of that professionalism that takes place when they are walking around with a gun, the moment that they do the unlawful activity, what's the accountability from your office? Because I'm aware of those officers who sat there and touched those young girls when there is no cameras watching in the dark streets. And although those young girls were not prosecuted for the prostitution charge that they were given, we have heard nothing of what took place of those sexual acts from the officers who arrested and violated them that night. We want accountability, and I would love to hear your remarks to how you're going to make certain not only my black boys who are in this neighborhood are safe, but all of the residents in the neighborhood that's before you. Who are you accountable to make certain you're doing your job?
I'm not aware of the incident you're talking about. I will hold my officers accountable. I have fired more officers in the 18 months I've been sheriff than any sheriff in recent memory. As to who holds me accountable, all of you hold me accountable. Simple as that.
Can you move over here with the microphone?
Thank you for making this chance to allow us to meet you and speak out. My name is Jane. I'm a homeowner. I'm one of the millions of people who are cheated by the banks. And many people facing foreclosure cheated by the bank because we were told 3 months no payment will help you. In the end, we were not only not get helped, also we were dragged into foreclosure. And in the same time, after 90 days, the banks receive an AIG bailout. And as a taxpayer, we pay you the salary to serving people. We hope you can understand, as a homeowner, we pay a lot of taxes to you. Your salary, your holidays, your everything is by a lot of people sitting here. However, the sheriff department evicted a homeowner as if they are enemy. The sheriff department evicted the 61 years residents in their home and arrested the mother, the father, and the son, so that you can help the Wall Street Bank, help the developer. Although you proudly spoke out at the 710 Cairo, you said you proudly to carry out your action. However, in the court order, the judge said would give the developer and the homeowner 20 days to figure out and talk to each other. Therefore, sheriff, you are in violation of the court order. And And you are the person who gave the order to your department. Evicted a black family at 6 o'clock in the morning. We have never heard, just last week. This is your discrimination without your thinking. It exists in your head. And we really think Sheriff Department should treat people equally, no matter they are black family or not. However, this Joanne's family last week was evicted at 6 o'clock in the morning. It's outstanding, outrageous. It's unfair and unnecessary. And the Sheriff Department, when you evicted the disabled veteran who is 61 years residing in their own home, you went there with the guns. It's totally waste of our tax dollars. And we think you should be responsible for those unnecessary action and unfair treatment to our homeowners.
Thank you.
And we also would raise a question. Why Sheriff Department refuse to meet SAFE, standing against the foreclosure homeowners and a representative? And we request you many times to let us know when you're going to evict homeowners. Why do you afraid of homeowners? We have no guns, we have no violence, we are just mad homeowners who are cheated by the banks. Where is your conscience, your moral? I need to hear your answer, sir. Thank you.
All right, come on.
Every eviction that we do is a court order. We are required to execute the court order.
Okay, private response.
We have.
All right, thank you.
We have no discretion about serving the court order. We have violated no court orders. I have met with SAFE in my office several times. I spoke to them on the phone several times.
All right, question right there. Go ahead.
Thank you for being here tonight. I'm Stephanie. And why aren't we going to the schools? Because I grew up with policemen coming to the school and talking to us from very young. And in that way, we get to know them more personal. We also get to feel like we are safe because they come with a great attitude. And they talk about things, what they do out there. I mean, it's just like parents coming to the school on Parents' Day and talk about their parents, what they do. But this would be different. You'd come and talk to the children, and it can be from little ones right up to high school. Because that's where you're going to get the connection that you need. They go home and tell their parents, Officer so-and-so was here and talked to us, and it was great. And you don't have to wait for an officer to come to you. My husband and I have gone and spoken to officers when they're standing in a blocked road. And we go up to them and talk to them, and we have a great conversation. That's one great way to get to know your officers. And you know, you're making the police department out to be really bad. I think we can be really bad too. And I had an officer pull me over on the freeway. That part, I don't mind. I was wrong, and I know I'm wrong. And I know what to do when I'm pulled over. My hands are on the steering wheel, so they know where I'm at and what I'm doing. So I'm not a threat to them. But I don't like the officer who did pull me over. He was very gruff and rude. I think if we all put a smile on our face, get rid of the past, and talk to people, talk to each other. This is not unrealistic. You wouldn't do it in your job. So you need to realize that, you know, if you put on a better air with yourself and with officers and other people. I have great friends of all faiths and all countries. And that isn't the issue. It isn't the issue with me. It's the issue of not wanting to change yourselves too. We all have to change. And the military have fought wars for us. They don't get jobs that easily when they come home. I had a son-in-law who had just that issue. He didn't get into the fire department in San Francisco. He didn't get into the police, state patrol in Utah. So they don't all get first billing. And he was top notch. He was top of the school in all of them. But, and he's an American Indian. He's not black, but he's an American Indian. So you're not the only ones who are getting locked out of this. But the military should have first call because they came back and they don't always get the best treatment when they come out of their military service. It's really tough.
Thank you. Go ahead, Farhat.
Sorry, I don't know if this is still on. I just wanted to say, I think it's really important that we understand. I think Silly said something earlier about is Ferguson happening, and it is happening, and I completely agree with that. If what happened in Ferguson is that there was a reaction based on race, that is happening all the time, and I just think that I appreciate the comments that a lot of people have made, but we need to understand that all of us are impacted, and Dr. Donaldson mentioned this earlier, by racism. We can't address this issue if we don't, like in other situations, understand that we have a problem. We all do. I can tell you, I don't know if many of you have taken, but I recommend all of you, and I especially recommend law enforcement, to take the implicit bias test. It's on the internet. You can look it up. And what it does is it gives you these pictures, and it tests your responses to it. And it shows you pictures, and some of the pictures are of African-American people, and some are of white people. And and I knew that this is what I was testing. And I am a civil rights person, an attorney that works on behalf of people of color. And I came out as strongly preferring white people, that my reaction was much more positive towards white people. And I'm not afraid to admit it because I recognize that. Our media, our upbringing, has ingrained into our head a reaction that is not, people commented about the time, the Jim Crow era. And in some ways, it was easier because it was out there, it was explicit, and it was easier to sort of point to it. The hard part that we all need to understand, and I'm talking about all of us, everybody in this room, because I'm a Latino, and I came out as, again, having a negative reaction to African Americans. And I need to understand that. I need to understand that that's my reaction, and I need to work to try to recognize that in my actions. And I think law enforcement and all of us need to recognize that, and we need to understand, and those of us who are not people of color need to understand that it's not just about smiling or about acting nice or acting in a non-threatening manner. We need to understand that the problem is that officers, even the most well-meaning officer, is going to react differently when somebody's a person of color, and particularly when somebody's an African American. We need to understand that that's the reality of what's happening. If we don't recognize that, then we're not going to be able to move forward. So I really urge everybody to recognize their own biases because we have them. And if you think that you're just not biased, then I'm sorry, but that's the problem. That's really the big problem.
Reverend.
I want to follow up on that by saying my opening statement, structured racism has nothing to do with intentionality. The more we hear, I think Sheriff has done a wonderful job of fielding a lot of questions tonight, and in rapid succession. But the more we hear that there is no racism and that there is equality, the more ire is going to be raised. There has to be an acknowledgement that there needs to be better sensitivity training. There has to be acknowledgement that there is hostility between the two communities. Acting like there is none only makes the hostilities worse. We cannot cover the boil. It simply will leak and spread poison everywhere. And until we can have the honest conversation that says there is mistrust on both ends, and that mistrust will only be rectified by meeting on common ground and places of equitability. Programs that we can't nail down, programs that we can't define, programs that we don't know where to go to, those aren't solutions. The solutions have to be definable, clear-cut, well-spoken, well-articulated programs that we can put our hands on and we can say to our young people, this is where you go and this is who you talk to.
Celia, do you want to add any remarks?
Yeah, so I thank you, Jorge and Pastor, for making the comments, because this is a heavy lift for our communities. And the thing that I want to say to folks is that I would really like for law enforcement to have a racial analysis on how racism impacts their work and communities of color. We all have, all of our systems are inherently racist in their history and in the way that they continue to exist. That's a fact. This isn't a criticism, this is a fact. And I say that with hope that someone and many of us can encourage and support law enforcement to do that work of developing an anti-racist policy and having an anti-racist analysis for law enforcement. While I was on the Highline School Board, we brought in the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond to do the anti-racist training for the superintendent and the leadership team. Upon that work was the adoption of racial equity policy in education for Highline Public Schools. It's the only district in, I think, in the area that has an equity policy. That's simple. Nobody talks about it, but it's something that we can hang our hat on and go to when we want to have conversations like this, because it's something that we have to believe in as a collective. And I want to say to my white allies to share the stories about how institutionalized racism plays out, because it isn't how we are in society, it's how society sees us. You know, people don't know if you don't know anything about Luke Wilson, that's a black man. Regardless of if he's nice and if he's articulate, he's still seen as a black person in our system. And so, and again, that's my belief in this work. And it's totally in line with what was said earlier tonight, that there's so many dynamics around race, but institutionalized racism is pervasive and it's in all our systems. So I'm here to hopefully lay the groundwork for that to happen, to create more space for these kinds of conversations. My hat's off to you, Dave. I knew you were going to get dinged when I heard that this was happening. I want to say to the folks at NAACP, Gerald, I know you're here. I can't see 5 feet in front of me, but keep doing the work that we need to do and define the place. And we just need to figure out how do we get our law enforcement everywhere, especially because we're in a region now that everybody's talking about equity this, equity that. The county has racial equity initiative. How does that really work in this conversation and in all the issues that were raised tonight? City of Seattle has a race and social justice initiative. Are we talking to each other about this? Or is everybody trying to do their own thing around racial equity? It all means all. When we're talking about racial equity and when we talk about racism, it impacts all of us, white, people of color. So let's just, I'm a resource. There's many of my allies and colleagues and organizers in the audience. We're all resources. because we want to speak truth to power. And we also want to make sure, how do we continue to build a generation of communities, especially of young people, that really believe in themselves and that we believe in them. So thank you.
Don't kill the messenger, but we've run out of time. Now, I know that there's others here that want to ask questions. The sheriff and the councilman are going to stick around. Mr. Satterberg, I think so too. So they're going to be here for a while longer. And I just need to close things out here. I do want to mention the fact that the video of this event will be online at King County TV. Also, you can check the councilman's page to find out where that address is so that you could do this. This has been a hard conversation tonight, not an easy thing. It's been enlightening, though, and the fact is that you're all willing to come here and have this conversation. It's a start, and it's going to be a lot of hard conversations to come, but the fact that you were willing to come here and do that says a lot about this community. So thank you for letting me be a part of this, and I have more conversations to come, and they'll probably be just as tough. Thank you very much.